The conversation started innocently enough at Sunday dinner, the way these family gatherings always began before spiraling into subtle competitions and thinly veiled criticisms. Sarah had spent the first 20 minutes showing off photos of her latest home improvement project, a kitchen renovation that featured marble countertops, custom cabinets, and a backsplash that she'd been planning for months. "It's amazing what homeownership allows you to do," she said, scrolling through her phone to display yet another angle of the pristine granite surfaces. "The equity just keeps building month after month. Unlike some people who throw money away on rent every single month with nothing to show for it." Mom passed the potatoes and nodded approvingly, her face lighting up with maternal pride. Sarah's always been the smart one with money. Very practical about long-term investments and building wealth. She thinks ahead. I continued eating my dinner quietly, accustomed to these subtle digs about my apparent financial shortcomings. To the family I was the underachiever, the one who worked at what they assumed was a small consulting firm, drove a modest Honda Civic that was 3 years old, and lived in what they believed was a rental apartment in a less prestigious part of town. "Speaking of rent," Dad chimed in, cutting his steak with more force than necessary, "maybe it's time you started thinking seriously about your future, Emma. You can't rent forever like some college student. At 29, most successful people are building equity and investing in real estate, not paying someone else's mortgage month after month." Sarah leaned back in her chair with a satisfied smile, clearly enjoying her position as the financially successful sibling. "I mean, I totally get it. Not everyone has the credit score or down payment saved up for property ownership. The requirements are pretty steep these days. But there are first-time buyer programs available, even for people in your particular situation." The condescension dripped from every carefully chosen word. Sarah had always positioned herself as the accomplished sibling, the one who had her entire life mapped out and executed perfectly. She'd graduated from business school with honors, landed a prestigious marketing position at a major pharmaceutical company, and purchased her first house at 26 with what she claimed was careful financial planning and disciplined saving. Meanwhile, I was just Emma, the quiet one who kept to herself, never seemed to amount to much professionally, and appeared content with a modest lifestyle that screamed underachiever to anyone paying attention. "The housing market is incredibly competitive right now," Uncle Robert added from across the table, always ready to pile on when the family discussed my various shortcomings. "You need substantial income, perfect credit, and a significant down payment. It's definitely not for everyone. Some people just aren't cut out for that level of financial responsibility." I nodded politely and took another bite of green beans, my standard response to these weekly assessments of my life choices. "You're all probably right about that. Don't get me wrong," Sarah continued, clearly relishing the spotlight and the opportunity to showcase her superior understanding of personal finance. "There's absolutely nothing wrong with renting. Some people just aren't cut out for the responsibilities that come with homeownership. The constant maintenance, the property taxes, the insurance premiums, the HOA fees. It's a lot to handle, and it requires a certain level of financial sophistication." Mom reached over and patted my hand sympathetically, her expression mixing concern with disappointment. "Maybe you could start small, honey. A little condo or townhouse. Something manageable. Work your way up gradually. If she can even qualify for a mortgage," Dad muttered, not quite under his breath but loud enough for everyone to hear. The family dinner continued for another hour and a half, with more detailed stories about Sarah's home improvements, her recent promotion to senior marketing manager, and her ambitious 5-year plan to upgrade to an even larger house in the suburbs with a 3-car garage and a swimming pool. I listened quietly, occasionally nodding when someone addressed me directly, maintaining the role I'd played for years. As we were clearing dishes and preparing dessert, Sarah cornered me in the kitchen while the others moved to the living room. "I hope you don't take what Dad said too personally. He just wants to see you succeed and build something meaningful. We all do, really." "I know," I replied, methodically rinsing plates and loading them into the dishwasher. "If you ever want some advice about getting pre-approved for a mortgage or connecting with a good real estate agent, I'm totally happy to help. I know this amazing woman who specializes in helping first-time buyers, especially those working with more limited budgets. She's very patient and understanding about different financial situations." I smiled and thanked her for the generous offer, maintaining the facade that had become second nature over the years. The drive home gave me time to reflect on the evening's conversation and the familiar patterns that had emerged. This wasn't new territory. These family dinners had followed the same basic script for years. Sarah would showcase her latest achievement or acquisition. The family would praise her financial acumen and forward-thinking approach to wealth building, and I would sit quietly while they discussed my apparent lack of ambition and questionable life choices. What they didn't know, what none of them had any idea about, was that I'd been paying Sarah's mortgage for the past 2 years. It started small and innocuous, the way these things often do. Sarah had called me in tears about 18 months after buying her house, explaining through sobs that her marketing job wasn't as stable as she'd initially believed. The pharmaceutical company was going through a major restructuring, her entire department was being eliminated, and she was facing a 3-month gap in employment while she searched for a new position. "I don't know what I'm going to do, Emma," she'd sobbed over the phone, her voice breaking with desperation. "The mortgage payment is $3,200 every month, and I've only got enough in savings to cover maybe 6 weeks, maybe 8 if I really stretch it. I can't lose this house. Not after everything I went through to get it, all the sacrifice and planning." She'd begged me not to tell the family about her situation. Her carefully constructed image as the successful sister was everything to her, the foundation of her identity within our family dynamic. The thought of Dad or Mom knowing she couldn't afford her mortgage payments was absolutely unbearable to her. So I helped, initially viewing it as a temporary solution to a short-term crisis. I set up a monthly automatic transfer from my business account to hers, covering her $3,200 mortgage payment while she focused on finding new employment. It was supposed to be a brief arrangement, just until she got back on her feet and could resume normal payments. But then she found a new job that paid significantly less than her previous position. The marketing role at a smaller biotechnology company offered better long-term stability and growth potential, but it came with a substantial $30,000 annual pay cut that made her mortgage payments completely unmanageable on her new salary. She kept the house by continuing to accept my monthly payments, which she now framed as a temporary loan that she'd definitely pay back once her financial situation improved, and she either got promoted or found a higher-paying position elsewhere. That was over a year ago, and the payments had continued every month without interruption. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. While Sarah delivered lectures about building equity and the long-term benefits of homeownership, I was literally financing her version of the American dream. Every month, I transferred $3,200 to keep her afloat financially, while she basked in the family's admiration for her supposed financial success and planning capabilities. The consulting firm I supposedly worked for was actually a cover for my real business, a property management company that I'd built from the ground up over the past 5 years. I owned 17 rental properties scattered across the city, generating enough passive income that I could afford to subsidize my sister's lifestyle without significantly affecting my own financial stability or long-term investment plans. But explaining that reality would require revealing the entire web of lies and assumptions that had become the foundation of our family dynamic. Sarah couldn't admit she was struggling financially without destroying her carefully maintained image, and I'd grown tired of trying to prove myself to people who'd already decided I was the family disappointment. Monday morning brought my usual routine of reviewing rental income reports and maintenance schedules. I checked the overnight email from my property manager, Janet, who handled most of the day-to-day operations while I focused on acquisitions and strategic planning. My 17 properties were performing well, with occupancy rates above 95% and rental income continuing to increase with market rates. The Riverside property is getting multiple applications from qualified tenants, Janet reported during our weekly call. 3 different candidates, all offering above the listed rent. We could probably get $2,800 instead of the advertised $2,600, maybe even $2,900 if we're selective. I approved the increase and moved on to reviewing expense reports for recent renovations on a duplex downtown. Business was thriving, better than thriving actually. The strong real estate market meant my properties were appreciating in value while generating steady rental income that I reinvested in additional acquisitions. My phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah. "Thanks again for dinner last night. Mom absolutely loved seeing the whole family together like that. By the way, I'm super excited about the new backsplash. Already thinking about redoing the master bathroom next. You know how home improvement projects go, there's always something else to update. Smiling face with smiling eyes. I stared at the message for a long moment, processing the casual tone and the mention of another expensive renovation project. The bathroom upgrade would probably cost another $15,000 to $20,000. Money she didn't have, that would inevitably be financed through credit cards or personal loans that she'd struggle to repay on her reduced salary. That evening, I made a decision that had been building in my mind for months. I called Janet first, my voice steady and businesslike. I need you to stop processing the monthly payment from Sarah Matthews for the Riverside property, effective immediately. The $3,200 monthly transfer that's been coming through automatically? Are you sure about this? I can set up a different payment method if there's an issue with the current banking setup. No, I said firmly, my decision crystallizing as I spoke. Stop accepting any payments from her entirely. Starting next month. Janet was confused but maintained her professional demeanor. Understood completely. Should I send formal notice about the payment discontinuation, or will you be handling all communications directly? I'll handle all notifications myself. Next, I called my accountant to discuss the tax implications of discontinuing the arrangement. The monthly payments to Sarah had been structured as family loans rather than rental income, which simplified the documentation and reporting requirements. The hardest call was to Sarah herself. Emma. What's up? She answered cheerfully, her voice bright with the confidence of someone who believed her financial support was guaranteed indefinitely. We need to talk about the monthly mortgage payments, I said without any preamble or small talk. Her voice immediately became cautious and uncertain. What about them? Is there some kind of problem with the transfer system? They're stopping. Next month will be the last payment. Silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds, broken only by the sound of Sarah's breathing becoming more rapid and shallow. What do you mean stopping? Emma, I can't afford the full mortgage payment on my own. My current salary isn't nearly enough to cover it plus all the other monthly expenses. I thought we had an understanding, an arrangement that worked for both of us. We did have an arrangement. For 24 months. But I can't continue subsidizing your lifestyle indefinitely. But I'm finally starting to get ahead financially, she protested, her voice rising with desperation. The bathroom renovation will add significant value to the house. It's a smart investment that will pay for itself. And I'm really hoping for a promotion next year that could bump my salary back up to where it was before, maybe even higher. I listened patiently as she explained why this particular moment wasn't good timing, how she just needed a few more months to get everything properly sorted out and stabilized. The same explanations and promises I'd been hearing for 24 consecutive months. Sarah, I can't keep subsidizing your mortgage while you lecture me about financial responsibility and the importance of building equity. What are you talking about? I never lecture you about money or anything like that. Last night at dinner, you spent over an hour explaining why I should buy property and build equity instead of throwing money away on rent every month. Another long pause as the implications sank in. That's completely different though. I was just trying to be supportive and helpful. Give you some friendly advice based on my own experience. Advice about homeownership and building wealth. While I pay your mortgage every month. Her voice became smaller and more defensive. You know I appreciate everything you've done for me. I can't lose this house, Emma. It would absolutely destroy me professionally and personally. And if the family found out that I've been struggling financially, that I couldn't actually afford this place on my own. That's not my problem to solve anymore. The conversation ended badly, with Sarah crying and making increasingly desperate promises about revised repayment schedules and more realistic timelines for financial independence. I felt guilty about her distress but also relieved that the charade was finally ending. The pretense had gone on far too long. 3 days later, Sarah called an emergency family meeting. I need to tell everyone something really important, she announced when we gathered at Mom and Dad's house Thursday evening. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept much over the past few days. What's wrong, sweetheart? Mom asked immediately, her maternal instincts activated by Sarah's obvious distress. Sarah took a shaky breath and looked around the room at all of us. I've been having some serious financial difficulties. More significant than I've let on to anyone. The truth is, I can't afford my mortgage payments on my current salary, and I've been getting financial help to keep the house. Dad leaned forward in his chair, his expression shifting from concern to confusion. What kind of help? A second mortgage? A personal loan from the bank. Emma has been paying my entire mortgage for the past 2 years. The room went completely silent, as if all the air had been suddenly sucked out of the space. Uncle Robert was the first to find his voice. Emma? Emma? The one who? I nodded calmly, meeting his incredulous stare. The monthly payments were $3,200. I've been covering her complete housing costs since she lost her first job after buying the house. But you don't even. Dad started, then stopped himself as he realized what he was about to say. Own property? Have a successful career? Make enough money to help anyone else? I filled in the blanks he was struggling with. Right. Mom looked completely bewildered, as if the fundamental assumptions about our family had suddenly been turned upside down. How could you possibly afford to pay Sarah's mortgage? Your job at that little consulting firm? My consulting firm manages $12 million in residential real estate assets. I personally own 17 rental properties throughout the city. Sarah's mortgage payment represents approximately 8% of my monthly rental income. The revelation hit the room like an explosion. Sarah was crying quietly, embarrassed by the public exposure of her financial dependence. Dad's face had gone through several distinct color changes as he processed the information that completely contradicted everything he thought he knew about my financial situation. 17 properties? Uncle Robert repeated weakly, as if saying the words might make them make more sense. Started with a duplex 5 years ago. Used the rental income to qualify for investor loans on additional properties. Pretty standard wealth-building strategy in real estate investment. Janet had prepared a portfolio summary for exactly these kinds of situations. A single page showing property locations, acquisition dates, current market values, and monthly rental income. I pulled it from my purse and placed it on the coffee table where everyone could see it. Dad picked up the document with visibly shaking hands. This says your properties are worth over $4.2 million in total. Current market assessment. I confirmed matter-of-factly. Though property values have been rising pretty consistently over the past 18 months, so that number is probably conservative. Sarah wiped her eyes with a tissue, her embarrassment now mixed with something that looked like resentment. I never meant for it to go on this long. I kept thinking I'd get a better job or a significant promotion, or something that would let me pay Emma back and handle the mortgage payments myself. Why didn't you tell us Emma was helping you financially? Mom asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because you all think she's the family failure, Sarah snapped, her embarrassment suddenly turning to defensive anger. Every single family dinner is about how successful I am and how Emma needs to get her life together and start making better choices. How was I supposed to explain that the successful sister needed financial support from the unsuccessful one? The room fell quiet again as everyone absorbed the full implications of what had been revealed. So when you've been giving me advice about building equity and buying property? I said to Sarah, letting the sentence hang in the air. I know exactly how it sounds, she said miserably. I wanted to keep up the image, you know? I worked so incredibly hard to buy that house, and when I couldn't afford it anymore, I couldn't bear to admit failure to everyone. Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. Emma, I owe you a serious apology. We all do. We've been completely wrong about your situation for years. Wrong about a lot of things, I agreed, my voice remaining calm and measured. But why didn't you ever say anything? Mom asked, her confusion genuine. All these years of us thinking you were struggling financially, making assumptions about your career? Because it didn't matter what any of you thought about my success. I didn't need your approval or recognition to build a profitable business. But I did get tired of funding Sarah's lifestyle while she lectured me about financial responsibility. Uncle Robert was still staring at the property portfolio document. You've been carrying all of this financial success quietly for years while you what? Made assumptions? Offered unsolicited advice? Treated me like the family disappointment. I shrugged. Real estate investment isn't particularly dramatic or exciting. You buy properties, maintain them properly, collect rent, and reinvest the profits. It's boring and steady, which doesn't make for exciting dinner conversation. Sarah looked up from her tissues. What happens now? With the house, I mean. That's your problem to solve, I said firmly. You have 30 days to figure out how to cover your mortgage payment without my financial support. I can't afford it on my current salary. You know that's impossible. Then sell the house. Downsize to something you can actually afford on your income. Or find a way to increase your earnings. But I'm not subsidizing your lifestyle anymore. The family meeting ended with a lot of uncomfortable silence and half-hearted apologies that felt more obligatory than genuine. Dad promised to be more supportive and less judgmental in the future, while Mom insisted she'd always believed in my potential, despite all evidence to the contrary. Uncle Robert asked for investment advice, which felt particularly ironic given his previous commentary about my financial prospects. Over the following weeks, Sarah explored her limited options with growing desperation. She listed the house for sale and started looking at smaller condos and townhouses that would fit within her actual budget. The elaborate bathroom renovation plans were quietly abandoned, along with several other home improvement projects she'd been planning. The hardest adjustment for her seemed to be accepting the reality of living within her actual means. For 2 full years, my financial support had allowed her to maintain a lifestyle that significantly exceeded her income. Without that safety net, she was forced to make real choices about spending priorities and lifestyle expectations. At the next family dinner, the entire dynamic had shifted dramatically. Instead of Sarah showing off expensive home improvement projects and dispensing financial advice, the conversation focused on her house hunting process and plans for downsizing to a more manageable living situation. Dad asked thoughtful questions about my real estate business operations, while Mom wanted to understand how I'd managed to build such a successful portfolio so quietly. I still can't believe you never said anything about your success, Sarah admitted over dessert, her voice carrying a mixture of admiration and resentment. All those times we made comments about your career prospects or your apartment. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment because I don't need much personal space, I explained patiently. My money goes toward acquiring income-producing assets, not lifestyle inflation or impressing other people. But you could afford a much nicer place, a luxury condo or a house. I could afford a lot of things. That doesn't mean I should buy them just because I can. The conversation that evening was fundamentally different, more honest, less performative, with genuine curiosity replacing the previous pattern of subtle competition and judgment. Sarah was still adjusting to her new financial reality, but she seemed somewhat relieved to drop the exhausting pretense of effortless success. A month later, she found a qualified buyer for her house and purchased a smaller condo that fit comfortably within her actual budget. The equity from the sale paid off her accumulated credit card debt and provided a modest emergency fund for future unexpected expenses. It's actually really nice, she told me when I helped her move into the new place. Smaller obviously, but I don't have to constantly worry about affording the monthly payments. And no more pretending to be something I'm not financially. The family dynamics continued to evolve gradually. Dad started asking for my opinion on financial matters and investment strategies, while Mom seemed genuinely interested in understanding how I'd built my business so successfully. Uncle Robert, perhaps most transformed by the revelation, had become almost deferential in his interactions with me. But the biggest change was in my relationship with Sarah. Without the financial dependence and the constant need to maintain false appearances, we could finally be completely honest with each other about our respective situations. She was working diligently on rebuilding her financial stability and independence, while I was learning to be more open about my successes and long-term goals. The Sunday dinners became more balanced conversations, with everyone contributing their perspectives rather than one person dominating with carefully curated achievement stories. Sarah talked openly about her job search for a position with better compensation, while I shared updates about property acquisitions and market trends. I still feel absolutely terrible about all those years of taking your money while simultaneously criticizing your life choices, Sarah said during one of our private conversations several months later. It taught me something valuable, I replied thoughtfully. Family support shouldn't come with strings attached or expectations, but it also shouldn't enable people to avoid facing reality indefinitely. Looking back, the 2 years of secret financial support had been both manageable from a business perspective and emotionally exhausting on a personal level. I'd gained important insights into the difference between helping someone through a genuine temporary crisis and subsidizing their permanent lifestyle choices that exceeded their actual means. Sarah's house sale closed on a Tuesday afternoon in November. That evening she sent me a text message. First mortgage payment on the condo, paid entirely from my own account. Feels absolutely amazing. Thank you for everything you did and for finally saying no when you needed to. The message felt like closure on a chapter that had defined our relationship for far too long. Sarah was learning to live authentically within her means, while I was learning to set appropriate boundaries that protected both my financial resources and my emotional well-being. The family had adjusted to a completely new understanding of everyone's actual circumstances and capabilities. No more assumptions about success or failure based purely on outward appearances or lifestyle choices. No more lectures about financial responsibility from someone who couldn't afford their own supposedly successful lifestyle. Most importantly, no more monthly transfers to maintain someone else's carefully constructed illusion of prosperity while being treated as the family disappointment who couldn't get her life together. That felt definitely worth celebrating.